Right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Curative Waffle. This time we are going to talk about the mismanagement or the I don't know what's going on. What's going on with Man United? So, headline appeared last night that Manchester United will move their women's team into portable buildings at the club's Carrington Training Complex next season to allow the men's squad to use the women's buildings while their facilities are being revamped. I think there was sources confirmed to ESPN. I think it was reported quite early on by a journalist. I forgot his name. Need to reread the article again. Yeah, I think this was reported to ESPN. Um, oh yeah, the Guardian actually reports the story first. And yeah, the portable buildings will house everyday zones such as changing rooms, team meeting rooms, office spaces, and communal areas for the women's players and staff. Yeah, obviously they still will use the same pitches and canteen as per, but I think that sends like some sort of precedent that I think the women's team is not important to the vision of Manchester United's in this new Jim Ratcliffe era compared to the ones before. I mean, like obviously Man United have been underperforming quite terribly last season. Like 2023-24 season was, to be honest, quite up and down, especially when you consider the departures that they had in Alicia Russo and Onabatia, two of which who were, I believe, the best players they have over the course of the previous season. And I think that was also facilitated by the decline, so to say, of Manchester City, who finished fourth. Yeah, I mean, like, if you went from finishing ahead of Arsenal and Man City to finishing 20 points behind Man City the next season and 15 behind Arsenal and fifth, even behind Liverpool by 6 points, you are, I don't know, there's something wrong with this team. Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, I've seen on, like Reddit and Twitter, the outrage was quite damning, especially from fans of women's football. Like if you're, I mean, like Manchester United's women's team didn't start, you know, as early as like Arsenal or Man City or Chelsea, but yeah, yeah, they were only reintroduced in 2018. Yeah, officially for the 2018-19 Women's Championship. Yeah, they hadn't had a team for 13 years, but yeah, but that's the thing, right? You made it so far up the ladder. You nearly competed in the Champions League group stages last season, but you kind of screwed over like the good progress that they had because the club wasn't run properly. Yeah, I think that's probably the main issue of United at the moment. Like you're losing players left, right, and center. Obviously, Mary Earps, who is probably one of the most commercially known players in that in England lineup, obviously, but also in the Man United lineup, being linked with the move to PSG. As per yesterday's news, and then you have the likes of obviously I've mentioned before Alicia Russo leaving for Arsenal, who is like traditionally in the men's game a great rival of United's, and then you have Onabatie returning to Barcelona. Obviously, that's like the lure of Barcelona is understandable, but then you have rumors like I don't know Katie Zelem leaving, who is the captain of the club, by the way, who's probably one of this. Yeah, obviously there's like three players that you kind of associate with Man United. That's Mary Earps, Ella Toon, and Katie Zelem, and Katie Zelem's like the third one, and she's probably another one who's likely to leave. And you have already confirmed the parts of like Lucia Garcia, and then I don't know. I think like I don't think like Ella Toon's gonna leave, and then there's also rumors that Grace Clinton, who is probably one of their most exciting talents, going to Tottenham on a permanent after joining them on loan for the entirety of the 23-24 season. Yeah, I think it's not, there's there's something. I want to say something wrong, but the way Ineos kind of alienated or put the women's side to the curbs essentially has not been a good look. I mean, like you could have at least tried to word it more elegantly, or yeah. I mean, like according to that article or according to that that report. Yeah, it's not a good look, especially with the with the women's players obviously being kind of felt like they were not important. Or yeah, I mean, like, yeah, obviously when you look at from a financial standpoint, it is very obvious that the women's side or the women's game does not bring as much money as the men's game. And obviously Manchester United's men's team, as underwhelming as they've been over the last decade or so, is still a money making machine. And that's it's sadly the priorities lie there, because Man United is a massive club and it's a massive institution, but it's not a well run institution, if you get what I mean. So when I mean, like, it's I think it's always this notion that Man United tried to catch catch the likes of Arsenal, likes of Chelsea, but then they just I think it was very impressive, right? When 20 in the 2022-23 season, United finished ahead of City and Arsenal, and that was like, okay, that's we can build on that. But the next season, they didn't build on anything. Like, they won the FA Cup, but they lost Russo, they lost Battier, they they got Jasep, to be honest, who's probably been okay, I guess. But yeah, their best player is Nikita Perez, who's turning 30. I mean, she's still very good. Don't get me wrong, but there's no follow up in that in that development of, like, of the team. Like, they finished fourth after getting promoted 3 seasons in a row, in 2019-20, 2020-21, and 2021-22. And yeah, they build it up with that second place finish. Well, in which they finished with 56 points from 22 games, which is going to be, which was more than the title winning side of this season. Both Chelsea and Man City finished with 55 points. That was very, very impressive. But sadly, the season they took a massive step backward in terms of, like, points scored. I mean, like, with 10 wins, 5 losses, and 5 draws and 7 losses, that's not acceptable for a side trying to compete for, the top spot. I mean, there's always this notion of the big three, right? Chelsea, Man City, Arsenal. Man United has been, knocking on that door, but they haven't established themselves as that. They're like the distant fourth side. But now, especially with what's been going on, I don't think even fourth is that guaranteed. Like, sure, they have the talent pool to beat the likes of, I don't know, Liverpool and Tottenham, because I think they haven't reached the financial investment, or they haven't established themselves. Like, I mean, Liverpool's also very new, right, in the grand scheme of women's football. But how Liverpool overtook Man United this season and beat them has, I don't know, it's kind of terrible, because Liverpool's women's team got relegated. In, like, what, 2021? I think so recently, right? Let me see. I need to see statistics. So they competed in the second tier as recently. Okay, they got promoted the season United finished fourth, and the next season they finished seventh. Yeah, in that season where United finished second, and then they finished fourth, and they reached the quarterfinals. I think, but the thing is, right, with Liverpool, they're still so far. I think, like, it's like this: the gap between the top three and the rest of the league is getting bigger, because the one who's usually chasing that top three pack has been going worse, and that's United. So yeah, it's really, really disappointing to see. I mean, like, I'm not a United fan, but the fact that the women's facilities that was recently invested in the last few years was going to be used by the men's team, because the normal Carrington facilities are under repair. I mean, like they're going to return it in the future, probably, but at least for the season. And you know, when you consider the volatility of women, the world of women's football, in terms of the financials involved, in terms of like on the player transfers, a lot of these players are not happy. Like you have a few, you know, a few decent stars or a few really good players in that United squad. Like, yeah, obviously like Ella Toon, like Katie Zellum, like Mary Earps, who's all English, right? And then you have young talents like Maya Letizier, um, Grace Clinton. These players are not going to be satisfied to be part of Man United. I mean, like it's not as as prestigious. Like you're playing for Manchester. Manchester United are the biggest club in England. Full stop. Right. In terms of like trophies won, the legacy, the stories, the success, but it's not and has not been a well-run club for many years. And when you look at Man City, for example, 115, irrespective of the 115, it's kind of a well-run club, even though they haven't been as ideal. I mean, like this is going to be another issue. Talking about Man City, or like Arsenal, who has not been as successful as they would expect it, even though they were like the trailblazers of women's football in the very beginning. They won the cup when won the Champions League. Like the last time was 17 years ago, which was way longer than I would have expected. So yeah, United. There's but what's like the solution, right? What's the main solution for this? I think there's no. Yeah, sadly, there's no short-term solutions to keep these players from staying. I mean, like it's so yeah, it's such an unfortunate situation that Man United structurally is kind of terrible from both sides. Like I think Jim Ratcliffe is trying to fix the first team or fix the men's team first because obviously that makes the most money. That's the main that's the main attraction of Man United, right? You want to see oh shit, like oh my god, the players. I know who's like the most exciting players. Yeah, I mean like yeah, if you compare, I say Bruno Fernandes and Alatoon, like it's not even comparable the effect or the commercialization that they bring, right? So yeah, I think it's in a way understandable, but it's very disrespectful as well to the established women's side. When you think about taking all the facilities away, they have to be compromised in order to make the men's side less compromised, so to say. Yeah, that's kind of disappointing to hear. Especially, yeah, I mean, like, it's not an ideal situation for anyone to have to essentially lose their place for another institution because that other institution's facilities are outdated, so they want to renew it. Yada yada yada. It's very interesting, but it's also it's very sad, and that's why I think the rumors are going to be wild because the WSL's transfer window has opened. It's opened a week earlier than everyone else, and then you have I mean like when you look at Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea already, there's always been murmurs of transfers and whatever. United, if they want to be part of the elite group, they need to at least pay more attention or not leave this squad of this is not a terrible squad by any means, right? It's a really good squad that's underperformed quite massively and couldn't cope with the loss of two key players. But instead of doubling down on this growth, they just leave it at that. So yeah, I think that's really disappointing. But yeah, once again, it's understandable because for a lot of these teams, I think women's football is an afterthought. But sure, it's disappointing to read, to see, to see on the internet how the discourses regarding the situation. But yeah, hopefully solutions are planned out from Ineos in order to keep women's football intact, at least not to go even deeper down in the league. Right? Thank you so much for listening, and yeah, looking forward to talk about more stuff on the internet. Goodbye.